People of Reddit, when is one time you have felt genuine, 100% fear? It was 5 years ago almost to the day. I was home with my 2 daughters who at the time were 3 and just over 1. I was giving them a bath, kneeling on the ground, and all of a sudden it felt like something exploded in my heart. I remember thinking, just get the kids out of the water, nothing else matters. I got them out of the water and was able to call an ambulance. I was taken to the hospital, and long story short, I had blood clots in both lungs and my right knee. They think a piece of the knee blood clot broke free and passed through my heart. I am very lucky to be alive and so grateful I was able to get my daughters out of the tub. I found out I have multiple blood clotting disorders and am on blood thinners for life, but I am alive. Running out of gas in my boat with my girlfriend in open water during a storm. Ended up on a shoal trying to hold the boat while a friend brought us more fuel. Honestly thought the waves would wash us away and drown. The morning of my mom's wedding. Everyone relaxing. Eating breakfast. Clothes everywhere. Cousins running around. All of the adults are on their porch chilling. I hear my daughter screaming. I run in the dining room. There were clothes draped over the back of a dining room chair. The clothes had a metal coat hanger on them. She had gotten the hook of the metal hanger under her eyelid. I grabbed the back of her head and slowly pulled the hook out. Put a little ice on her eye for a bit. Luckily, it hadn't hit her eyeball at all. When I was still a beginning driver, I basically misjudged a turn at a highway exit when it was raining. My car swiveled and turned around. Somehow I managed to get it to stop, but I ended up bumping the side railing with the back of my car, and the car turning more than 180 degrees on the road before coming to a halt. This is a very busy exit, and if someone had been right behind me I'd have been dead. Somehow I managed to gather my wits, restart the car, turn it around, and drive off before another car hit me. I stopped at the earliest possible parking opportunity, and that was when I felt it, the fear. I just started shaking uncontrollably. A few years back I was in a toxic relationship with an individual suffering from several mental illness. He refused to take medications. I had not a clue how bad it had gotten until he was driving us back to our apartment. He started rambling about how God chose him to save my soul and I was a fallen angel. He would send me back to heaven. He floored the gas on a short dead-end road and almost drove into a cement wall. I remember briefly wondering if I should put the car at 50 miles per hour, or stay in and pray the airbag saved me. He slammed the brake last minute as I was about to open the door and jump. Absolute fear. I ended up hospitalized a few days later due to other shitty relationship-related events and never saw him again. Hands down, one of the more terrifying moments of my life, but not the only one I experienced by being with him. I was flying an airliner. We were maybe 1,000 above the ground while on approach to land at a smaller airport. There were thunderstorms in the area and we ended up in a microburst with zero visibility. We got a wind shear warning in the cockpit and started to go around. At full throttle and the nose up we were still sinking at around 400 feet per minute. Everything seemed to be running in slow motion. Both me and the other pilot were running through our required actions and call-outs due to the training. In the back of my mind all I could think about was I can't see the ground and we are falling. I know there is a hill out here somewhere, this is where I am going to die. The plane got down to around 400 feet off the ground before it finally started to climb. This was the most fear I had ever felt in my life. I used to measure roofs for a solar company. One time I went up on a very steep roof of a 2-story house alone, and without a harness. This roof plane was too steep to walk and the shingles were old and crumbling, so I had to crawl so I didn't slide down towards the edge. After about an hour of crawling around, the sun began to bake the shingles so they were too hot to touch, so I decided to bug out. As the roof was too steep to walk, the only way to the ladder was by scooting on my butt with my feet pointed towards the edge. Every time I'd skid toward the edge, my heart exploded in fear because it was hard to stop from moving. I had to use my hands to slow myself down and they were getting burned. All I could do was to rub my palms on my legs to transfer some of the heat, but they were being scorched. Imagine putting your hand on a hot frying pan full of grit. I was completely alone, in a faraway town, with no one to call. It took forever to get to the ladder, and by the time I did I was shaking and drenched in sweat. When I finally got back to the ground, some people came out from a nearby house and said they saw me and were ready to call 911. I had burn blisters on both palms and I never went on a roof like that again without a helper or PPE. When I was trying to sleep at around 3 and felt someone press on my bed. Then bag on the chair started shaking. Then again I felt something on my bed. Finally I had the courage to switch on light and found a giant rat on my bed. When I watched my dog get killed by the neighbor's dog, I was afraid to even get near their yard for a week. Once my mother called me on the phone telling me that a copy of our house keys was stolen that afternoon from the lobby and someone might be in the house. This happened in the exact moment I was entering the house. Pretty scary, but no one was there, thank God. Edit. I wrote Porter's Lodge instead of lobby. I was riding my bike home from work along a pretty busy main road. I live in the city. I got to a downhill and started to pick up pace when I noticed a brown snake, which are very deadly, lying across the bike just lane ahead of me. There was a car in the lane next to me and it was too late to stop, but I somehow managed to dodge the snake and kept riding. About 50 meters later, just as I thought I was safe, I heard a very loud hissing and felt something rush past my leg and thought the snake had somehow caught up and bitten me. It turns out my back tire burst, but in the moment I was absolutely terrified. I'm from the Dominican Republic. There are a lot of dogs in the streets, and they usually hang in these calmadoos, mini market, that are in pretty much every neighborhood. My parents would send me to buy stuff almost every weekend, and the dogs would chase me a lot of the time since the calmadoos sell over the counter. I would have to buy whatever it was and try to not let the dogs see me, and if they saw me I had to run uphill while being chased by 5 dogs. That was not fun. I was on a 360-degree roller coaster and you go around and around, but it got stuck at the very top and the ride shut down for 5 minutes, so I was upside down and I was very little and it was terrifying. The time I got into bed with my girlfriend and immediately started coughing up blood. Ran into the bathroom and held onto the sink for dear life. Every breath I tried to take I just ended up wheezing more blood out of my lungs. By the time the ambulance got there I had pretty much come to terms that this was how I died. Then it slowed down and finally stopped by the time I got to the ER. Long story short, it turned out to be Hodgkin's lymphoma. Had chemo for 6 months and am cured now with minimal repercussions. Scariest time of my life. I was 6 years old and went to take a leak. I was at my grandma's house in a small village in India. The bathroom was an outhouse. Just as I was about to start, I noticed a cobra hissing at me. I ran like hell. When I was alone in my house and I heard something call my name. It was probably some weird bird or something outside, but I was 11 and dumb, so I was terrified. Edit. Damn, a lot of people seem to have had similar experiences. Now that I think about it, my fiancée has experienced this as well. When she was young, she heard her dad call her name while she was in a store. She went out into the road where it was coming from, but he wasn't there. Her dad eventually ran out after her, asking where she was going, and she said she heard him calling her. But he said he was in the shop with her the whole time. Edit 2. Thanks for all the comments, people. From what I gather, it could very well be an auditory hallucination. Or a malevolent spirit. But still could be a crow with a slight accent, as my name is Carl. When my mom and then 5-year-old brother got in an ATV accident. They were driving slow through the woods and a large, dead tree fell alongside the trail, knocking down a smaller tree, which hit them both in the head. Freak accident. My other brother and I were outside filling the pool and we heard my mom yelling something. I didn't know what it was, but my stomach dropped. We both ran to the head of the trail across the yard, and she was carrying my little brother, both covered in blood. She ran half of that mile-long trail carrying him. They were both in the hospital for a week. Mom got some stitches in her face, and my brother's skull was shattered, requiring surgery and a metal plate put in. He's graduating high school next year and doing well. Edit. Damn, I didn't expect this to blow up. Thanks everyone for the well wishes and cake, smiley face. My first time doing truffles. We were in our hotel room plus another friend who was in Amsterdam with us at the time, for a total of 3 guys. I was just hanging out, being a jolly idiot in the bathroom looking at the tiles. Walked back into the bedroom and friend 1 is in a fetal position staring at our wide open window. We're on the top floor, so pretty high up. I can't see friend 2 anywhere, so I ask after him, only to get a 1,000-yard stare and the answer: he went out. I say that I didn't hear the door when I was in the bathroom. He didn't go out the door, says friend 1. So I sidle my way over to the window and can't see anything. I'm absolutely freaking out. All the thoughts about what we're going to have tell his family, what do we do, etc. etc. I sit down on the bed next to friend 1 and just felt cold. Then friend 2 just slumps out of where he was, being an idiot, curled up in the wardrobe of the room. I don't think I've ever cried in relief before that or since. 4 posted this before, but anyway. Buckle up, it's a long one. We used to go sailing in the BVIs for summer holidays when I was younger. One evening we were anchored in a bay with a party boat of teenage Americans nearby. After some alcohol, starting a water fight seemed like a great idea. At some point during the ensuing chaos I ended up kidnapped and held as a hostage on their tender, little motor boat for getting from sailboat to shore. They decided to drive me out to sea, and once we were thoroughly out of the bay they started joking about tossing me overboard. Drunk me is not smart. Drunk me thought the best response to this joke thread was to stand up and yell, "You can't throw me overboard," if I jumped out, which I promptly did. They laughed and drove off. I was left floating in the middle of the sea about half a mile from shore in the pitch black. At first the alcohol stopped me from panicking and I decided to just swim back. Half a mile isn't that bad, right? Now my brain was beginning to wonder what was swimming around beneath me, but I was mostly calm until something bounced off my leg. This is the point at which I need to introduce you to the villain of this story. You see, usually the BVIs has lovely safe clear waters. However, once every 4 to 5 years they get unusually high numbers of moon jellyfish. Of course, moons aren't scary at all. They rarely sting, and when they do it's not even as painful as a nettle sting. They really weren't the problem. It was the creature that used them as a food source that was the danger. Known colloquially as the stinging cauliflower. They were purple balls of pure evil. In our marine life books they were the only jellyfish that got the same danger/pain rating as the man-o-war jellyfish. Earlier that holiday a young girl from another boat got stung while playing on the beach. We heard her scream from about a quarter of a mile out the bay at anchor. She went into anaphylactic shock and almost died. Side story: the vinegar and talcum powder we had stocked for jellyfish stings apparently saved her life according to the emergency responders, because we zoomed it over when we heard the mayday on the radio. Anyway, back to my story. There I was half a mile out from shore in the pitch black with no idea if these kids were going to come back and get me or if they would even be able to find me again in the dark, since I had no idea if I was drifting with any current. A moon jellyfish had just bounced off my leg, and where there are moons there were always cauliflowers. I was pretty certain if I swam into one and got stung, chances are I wouldn't be able to stay afloat and I would drown. I start to feel genuinely sick and scared, struggle to keep my breathing under control, etc. But there's nothing to do except swim and hope to high heaven I don't hit one. So that's what I did. It was over 15 minutes before the shitheads came back to get me. By this point the panic and swimming had turned my muscles to jelly and they had to literally haul me back into the boat. I never told my family or friends on the holiday, didn't want to ruin their fun. I just quietly told folks I was tired and went to bed. To this day I can still taste the salt in my mouth and feel my heart rate and breathing increase when I tell that story. TLDR, I am a stupid drunk and jumped in jellyfish-infested water in the middle of the night and got left there and tried to swim back. I'm lucky I'm not dead. Anytime you turn around and your child isn't still behind you. I was sitting in the waiting room of the ICU talking to my aunt. My dad has just been moved from the ER to the ICU that morning. My mom was with him, but I had to go to the waiting room while they got him settled in. All of a sudden, I hear code blue ICU room XYZ. I didn't even know what his room was, but I just had this terrible feeling. My entire body goes numb. I look at my aunt and say I am going back there. As soon as I open the ICU ward door, a nurse looks at me and says, "Are you the daughter of so-and-so?" with a very empathetic look on her face. And I say, "Yes." "OMG, is that my dad? Is that my dad coding?" She says, "Come with me." We sprint down the hall to the back of the ICU and I turn the corner to see a room full of people. My mom is standing in the corner, in complete shock. My 100% genuine fear? Standing in the corner of the ER watching nurses perform CPR on my dad. For 17 minutes. CPR is nothing like you see on TV. Any medical professional will agree with me. It is violent and intense. There were about 15 people in the room and it is intense. Organized chaos. It is one of the worst memories I have, but talking about it somewhat helps. I miss you, Dad. And hashtag X200B. Edit. Wow. Thanks for everyone responses. And a gold? I had to look up what it meant, but I know that it is awesome. When they told me my 12-year-old has a stroke during brain surgery. Fear. This was a combination of fear and shock, but 2 years ago my now wife's landlord/roommate committed suicide. The day before he did, he texted me asking if I could come by after work to feed his cats. He said he would be leaving and wouldn't be back in time to feed them. It was a brutal 13-hour day. I came home first, grabbed my wife, then GF, who was at my apartment, to come with me so we could feed his cats and then go grab a late dinner. When we arrived, we opened the front door, which led directly to the stairs, townhome type setup, garage first floor, main living area on the second. On the stairs there was an envelope addressed to me, and the note inside was pretty much face value. My wife and I were joking and in high spirits on the way over there, and she really needed to pee. So she was a few steps in front of me, as I was reading the note, which seemed like a fantasy. This is where my reality turned into a haze. The second sentence was, "There's no mess, but I have killed myself and I'm upstairs in my bedroom with the door closed." As soon as I read this, I very sternly told my wife, "Get down here right now and wait outside." I made the short trek up the stairs, glanced to my right and saw his bedroom door closed. This is where my fear was at its peak, hoping this was just a fucked up hallucination. But when I reached for the doorknob and opened, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. He had a large medical-sized tank of nitrous that he had rigged up to a suicide bag, Google if you must, that he placed over his head, and secured with a headband around his throat. His whole head was so purple and blue. I could feel myself about to puke and I kind of tripped going back down the stairs and outside. I took my phone out without saying anything to my girlfriend, and she only found out when I told the 911 dispatcher that my girlfriend's roommate had committed suicide. After somewhat composing myself and heeding the dispatcher's advice, I ran back upstairs and removed the bag and began giving CPR, but I only made it like 10 pumps because fluids began coming out his mouth and his eyes rolled open, and they were just glosses over and lifeless and gone. The paramedics said he was gone for a while and there wasn't anything more I could have done, but I still wonder, had I not gone downstairs first after discovering him to make the call, and if I would have taken that fucking plastic bag off immediately, he might have had a chance. But, there ya have it. My most fearful event. To anyone reading, this is the first I've ever written about this, and getting it out was very cathartic. Suicide is fucked. Please reach out if you are struggling. Life is amazing. And the friends and family you leave behind are scarred forever.